The rain hammered against the workshop roof like 1,000 angry fists. I stood there, grease still wet on my hands, watching my father tear my design sketches into pieces. Each rip felt like a knife cutting through my chest. "You'll never be part of this family business," he said, his voice cold as winter steel. He handed the blueprints to my older brother Marek, who smirked at me from across the room. The other workers looked away, pretending they didn't see my humiliation. My father's words echoed through the metal walls. "You earn your place here, boy, not with dreams, but with obedience." The torn papers floated to the concrete floor like broken wings. I watched them fall, each piece containing hours of work, days of hope. My hands trembled, but I kept them at my sides. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Not here. Not in front of everyone who had watched me grow up in this workshop. I walked out into the storm, rain soaking through my shirt within seconds. Behind me, I heard laughter from inside the workshop, my brother's voice, loud and mocking. When I turned back, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The workshop sign that had read Cauldron and Sons for 20 years now just said Cauldron and Son. They'd painted over my name while I was working inside. My existence erased overnight like I'd never mattered at all. Through the glowing window, I could see Marek celebrating with my father, drinks raised high. That's when something inside me shifted. The boy who had spent 17 years trying to earn love from a man who had none to give finally died in that rain. I stopped being their son that night. My name is Taran Cauldron, and this is how I learned that some places aren't worth earning. They're worth leaving behind. 6 months earlier, everything had been different. Or at least I'd believed it was. The workshop smelled like motor oil and metal shavings, scents that had filled my childhood. I'd wake up at 5 every morning, sleeping beside the engines in the corner where my father made me stay. My brothers had rooms in the house above, warm beds and family dinners. I had a blanket and the cold concrete floor. But I didn't complain. I fixed engines before sunrise, testing each repair twice to make sure it was perfect. My father would come down at 7, inspect my work without a word, then praise Marek and Darius for jobs I'd actually done. Customers started noticing, though. Old man Brennick once asked my father, "Who's the kid who fixed my tractor? He's got real talent." My father smiled and said, "That's my oldest, Marek. Real chip off the old block." I was standing right there, grease up to my elbows from the repair. But I stayed silent. That's what good sons did, right? One afternoon, a farmer named Hollis brought in a broken generator. His face was weathered and worried. "Can't afford much," he admitted, looking at the ground. "But my daughter needs her medical equipment running." My father quoted him $300, knowing Hollis didn't have it. When my father left for lunch, I quietly repaired the generator and told Hollis it was done. "How much?" he asked, reaching for his wallet. "Nothing," I said. "Just make sure your daughter stays healthy." His eyes filled with tears. He gripped my shoulder hard. "You don't just fix things, son. You heal them." I didn't know it then, but those words would echo through my life in ways I couldn't imagine. When my father returned and found out, he backhanded me across the face. "We're not a charity," he snarled. My lips split open, but I didn't regret it. Some things mattered more than money. Some things mattered more than earning a place. The old traveler arrived on a Thursday evening, pushing a rusted motorbike that looked older than my father. He was covered in oil stains and road dust, his hands calloused and scarred like they'd built and broken 1,000 machines. My father looked him over with disgust. "We close in an hour. Come back tomorrow if you can afford our rates." But something about the man's tired eyes pulled at me. "I can look at it now," I offered. My father shot me a warning glare but said nothing. The traveler watched me work with an intensity that made my skin prickle. I cleaned the carburetor, replaced a worn belt, adjusted the timing. Simple fixes, but I did them carefully. When I finished, the bike purred like a satisfied cat. "How much?" the traveler asked. "Just pay for the parts. $15. The man smiled, a strange knowing smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're different from your father," he said quietly. I didn't know how to respond to that. The traveler stayed the night in the workshop because the rain had turned violent. My father had gone up to the house, leaving me alone with the stranger. By the dim light of my work lamp, the old man told me stories about machines that could power entire villages, about inventions that changed lives. I listened, my hands moving automatically as I sketched ideas in my worn notebook. The traveler leaned over to look at my drawings. His expression shifted, something like recognition flashing across his weathered face. "You have your mother's gift," he said softly. I froze. "You knew my mother?" He didn't answer directly. Some people see machines as metal and bolts. Others see possibility. She saw possibility in everything. Before I could ask more, I turned to grab my eraser. When I looked back, he was gone. The workshop door hung open, rain blowing in. On my workbench sat a small folded piece of paper, the edges worn like it had been carried for years. I unfolded the note with shaking fingers. The handwriting was elegant but firm. "You fix more than machines, you fix hearts. Don't let them break yours." I read it 3 times, trying to understand who this man was and why he cared. The next morning, my father noticed me distracted. "What's wrong with you?" he demanded. "Nothing," I said, hiding the note in my pocket. But he saw something in my face he didn't like. "You're getting soft. Weak. Your mother was the same way, always helping people who couldn't help themselves. Look where it got her." He spat on the ground. "Dead and forgotten." The words hit me like hammers. I'd been 5 when she died, barely remembered her face. But I remembered her hands, gentle and capable, showing me how to fix a broken music box. My father had thrown that box away after her funeral, said it was junk. But I'd kept one gear hidden in my toolbox. The note became my secret fuel, proof that someone saw worth in me. Marek started watching me after that, his eyes narrow with suspicion. He was 3 years older, bigger, and had always enjoyed my father's favor. 2 weeks after the traveler left, Marek found my improved blueprints hidden behind the workbench. Designs for a water pump that could work without electricity, perfect for the farms around our mountain town. He studied them with growing anger. That evening, he showed them to my father. I walked into the office to find them both hunched over my drawings. "Where did you get these?" my father demanded. "I made them," I said. Marek laughed. "You? You're a grease monkey, not an engineer." My father's face darkened. "You think you're better than this family? Better than the work we do?" He crumpled one of the drawings. "Pride comes before a fall, boy. You need to learn your place." That night, I heard them talking through the vents. Marek's voice floated up clearly. "Those designs could be worth money. Real money." My father's response chilled me. "Then we'll use them, just not under his name." 3 days later, my father called me into the office. "We have a client meeting tomorrow," he said. "Someone interested in custom work. I want you to present your water pump design." Couldn't believe it. After years of being invisible, he was finally giving me a chance. I spent all night refining my presentation, practicing what I'd say. The next morning, I walked into the meeting room with my blueprints rolled under my arm, hope fluttering in my chest like a caged bird. But when I opened the door, Marek was sitting at the table beside my father. In front of them were my designs, spread out with my brother's name printed across the top. The client, a man in an expensive suit, nodded appreciatively. "Impressive work, young man," he said to Marek. My brother smiled. "Thank you. I've been working on this for months." I stood in the doorway, speechless. My father glanced at me. "Taryn, go check on the Morrison repair. We're busy here." The door closed in my face. Through the wood, I heard applause, heard the deal being signed, heard my future being sold under someone else's name. The next morning, I arrived at the workshop to find my workstation empty. Someone had cleared out my tools, my notebooks, everything. The small nameplate that said Taryn was gone, replaced by spare parts bins. My brother's stations remained exactly as they'd been. On the wall where my mother's photograph had hung, the one photo of her I'd kept, there was just a blank space. My father was waiting when I noticed. "Where's my mother's picture?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He shrugged. "Threw it out. Clutter." Something broke inside me then. Not broke, shattered. "Why?" The question came out as a whisper. He stepped closer, his breath smelling of coffee and cruelty. "Because you need to understand something. Your mother left this world a failure. She spent her time helping people who couldn't help her back. She died with nothing." He jabbed a finger at my chest. "You're going the same way. She'd be ashamed of you." The words were designed to destroy me, and they almost did. Almost. I packed my small toolbox that night, taking only what was mine. A few wrenches, screwdrivers, the gear from my mother's music box. I left the workshop at dawn, walking down the mountain road as the sun rose behind me. I didn't look back. For the first week, I wandered between villages, offering to fix anything people needed. I repaired tractors for meals, welded fences for a place to sleep. My quiet kindness began building something I hadn't expected. A reputation. People started remembering the boy who never asked for more than what was fair, who fixed things like he was healing them. Old Hollis found me in the third village I stayed in. "Heard you were out here," he said. "My daughter wants to thank you personally. That generator's still running perfect." His daughter, a girl my age named Senna, made me dinner. "You saved my life," she said simply. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a homeless kid with a toolbox. But their gratitude warmed something inside me that my father's cruelty had frozen. For weeks after I left, the first envelope arrived. I was staying in a barn outside a village called Grey Hollow, repairing farm equipment for the owner. The envelope was thick, expensive paper with no return address. Inside was a detailed mechanical sketch, a design for a solar-powered irrigation system that was far beyond anything I'd seen. At the bottom was a note. "Build this. Parts and payment enclosed." Attached was $300 in cash. I checked the postmark, the capital city. 2 days later, another envelope arrived at my next stop. A design for a wind-powered grain mill. Same note, same mysterious payment. The handwriting matched the note the traveler had left me. I started building both designs, working late into the nights. The irrigation system worked perfectly. The grain mill was a masterpiece. Farmers came from neighboring villages to see them. "Who designed these?" they asked. "A friend," I said, because I didn't know what else to call him. But I felt like I was being guided by an invisible hand towards something greater than myself. The whispers started in the fifth village. A merchant who'd come through from the capital pulled me aside. "Kid, you need to be careful. Someone powerful is watching you." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He lowered his voice. "I saw designs exactly like yours at the innovation fair in the capital. Big display, lots of money behind it. They were marked under some mysterious company name I'd never heard of." He studied my face. "You didn't know?" I shook my head. That night, I stared at the envelopes, trying to make sense of it. Who was this person? Why were they helping me? The next package arrived with a different kind of note. "Your kindness has not gone unnoticed. Neither has their cruelty. Keep building." The words sent chills down my spine. Someone was watching my father too. Watching everything. I should have felt afraid, but instead I felt something else. Protected. Like someone was finally on my side. Fighting a battle I didn't fully understand yet. The mystery deepened, but so did my resolve to keep going. I was working on a broken water wheel in a village called Ashmont when a familiar voice called out. "Well, look at the charity case." Marek stood at the edge of the village square, dressed in expensive clothes I'd never seen before. Designer boots, a leather jacket that probably cost more than I'd earned in 6 months. He walked over, his smirk sharp as broken glass. "Heard you've been playing inventor out here in the dirt." I kept working, not giving him the satisfaction of a response. "Dad and I are doing great, by the way. That water pump design made us a lot of money. Got contracts with 3 different farming co-ops." He wanted me to break, to show anger or pain. I just tightened a bolt. His face reddened. "You're pathetic. Playing with toys while real men build businesses." He kicked over my toolbox, scattering wrenches across the ground. I stood slowly, meeting his eyes. "If you're so successful, why did you come all the way out here to tell me about it?" He had no answer for that. As he left, I noticed a shadow in the alley across the square. Tall, weathered, watching. The traveler. When I blinked, he was gone. I chased the shadow through the village, my heart pounding. But by the time I reached the alley, there was no one. Just another folded note, placed on a barrel where I'd see it. My hands shook as I opened it. "When they take everything from you, that's when you begin to build. Your mother understood this. Soon you will too." My mother. He kept mentioning her. I sat on the ground, note clutched in my fist, trying to remember her face. I remembered her humming while she worked. Remembered her showing me a sketch once. Something beautiful and complex. "This could help so many people," she'd said, her eyes bright with possibility. My father had torn that sketch up too, I realized now. Just like he'd torn up mine. The pattern had been there all along. This traveler knew her, knew what she'd created, knew what my father had done. The pieces weren't quite fitting together yet, but I felt the shape of something huge lurking beneath the surface. Something that involved not just me, but my entire family's history. A truth that had been buried for 17 years. The letter arrived 2 months after I'd left home, delivered by a courier who tracked me through 3 villages. Official paper, wax seal, the kind of presentation that meant serious business. Terran Cauldron, it read, "You are cordially invited to display your work at the Capital Innovation Fair. Transportation and accommodation provided. Your presence is requested by AD, patron of independent inventors." My hands trembled holding it. The Capital Innovation Fair was legendary, where the biggest minds in the country showcased breakthrough inventions. And someone wanted me there. I almost refused. My father's voice echoed in my head. "You don't belong among men of value. You're a mechanic's reject." But then I thought of the traveler, of the mysterious support that had kept me going, of my mother's memory. I wrote back a single word, "Yes." 3 days later, a train ticket arrived first class. I packed my small toolbox, the gear from my mother's music box, and the collection of notes that had guided me. Whatever waited in the capital, I would face it. Even if it destroyed me. The capital was overwhelming. Buildings stretched toward the sky, metal and glass catching the sunlight. Factories hummed with constant activity. The streets were packed with people moving with purpose I'd never seen in my mountain town. The Innovation Fair occupied the entire convention center, 5 floors of exhibits and demonstrations. I felt small and out of place in my worn clothes, carrying only my toolbox. But as I walked through the halls, something caught my eye. A banner advertising revolutionary agricultural solutions. The design on the banner was my mother's sketch. The same one she'd shown me as a child. The same one my father had destroyed. My chest tightened. I moved closer, studying it. The design was credited to Cauldron Engineering Solutions, my father's company. But the style, the elegant lines, the innovative thinking, it was all hers. He'd stolen it, stolen her work and claimed it as his own. How many other designs had he taken? How many of my mother's ideas had built his reputation? The betrayal ran deeper than I'd ever imagined. This wasn't just about me. This was about erasing her entire legacy. Couldn't sleep that night. The hotel room felt too big, too clean. At midnight, I snuck back to the convention center. The security guard at the back entrance was reading a newspaper. I slipped past while he was distracted. The exhibition halls were dark and echoing, my footsteps too loud on the polished floors. I found the Cauldron Engineering display and saw a door marked, "Private. Property of Marek Cauldron Engineering." The lock was simple. I picked it using a bent screwdriver, a skill I'd learned fixing old filing cabinets. Inside was a storage room filled with blueprints. Dozens of them. Hundreds. I turned on my phone's flashlight and started looking through them. My mother's signature was on everything. Her handwriting, her elegant sketches, her brilliant ideas. Each one had been traced over with my father's name or Marek's. Years of work, stolen and repackaged. I found my own designs too, the ones I'd created before leaving. All credited to my brother. The evidence was overwhelming. My father had built his entire reputation on theft. I sank to the floor, surrounded by ghosts of creativity, and wept. A sound made me freeze. Footsteps. I scrambled to hide, but the door opened and light flooded in. The security guard stood there, flashlight pointed at me. I was caught. I'd be arrested. Everything would be over. But instead of calling for backup, the guard stepped inside and closed the door. He handed me a sealed envelope. "He said you'd come," the guard whispered. "Said you needed to see the truth before tomorrow." My hands shook taking the envelope. Inside was a formal invitation printed on heavy cardstock. "Tomorrow, Hall of Innovation. Main stage, come as you are. The truth will set you free." It was signed AD, the same initials from the previous letter. The guard watched me with kind eyes. "I don't know who you are, kid, but someone important is going out of their way to help you. Don't waste it." He let me out through the back exit. I walked back to my hotel in a daze, the invitation burning in my pocket like a coal. Tomorrow everything would change. I just didn't know how yet. All I knew was that 17 years of lies were about to collapse. The Hall of Innovation was packed. Journalists crowded the front, cameras ready. Industry leaders filled the middle rows. And there, in the very front, sat my father and Marek, dressed in expensive suits. They looked confident, powerful, successful. Everything I'd never been allowed to be. The crowd quieted as a figure walked onto the stage. The traveler. But he was transformed. No longer ragged and dirty. He wore an immaculate suit. His gray hair swept back, his presence commanding. He looked like someone who owned buildings and shaped industries. "Good morning," he said, his voice amplified through the hall. "My name is Aldrich Devens, founder of Devens Industrial Solutions. I'm here today to introduce you to the future of agricultural technology." The screen behind him lit up with images. My designs. The irrigation system, the grain mill, the water pump, but also older designs, beautiful and elegant. My mother's work. "These innovations," Aldrich continued, "were created by the most brilliant mind I've ever known, and by her son, who inherited her gift." The crowd murmured. My father's face went pale. Aldrich smiled. "Let me tell you about Marissa Cauldron." 20 years ago, Aldrich said, his voice filling the hall. "Marissa Cauldron was my business partner. Together, we designed agricultural solutions that could have changed thousands of lives." The screen showed photos of my mother, young and vibrant, standing beside Aldrich in front of machinery. But her husband, Thorn Cauldron, saw her gift as his opportunity. He systematically stole her designs, presenting them as his own work. When she confronted him, he destroyed her original sketches and told everyone she was mentally unstable. The crowd gasped. Cameras turned toward my father, who was trying to stand, to leave. But Aldrich's voice cut through the chaos. "Sit down, Thorn. We're not finished." Security guards moved to block the exits. Aldrich continued, pulling up document after document on the screen. Patents filed in Thorn's name with Marissa's handwriting. Contracts signed with her designs. Testimony from old workers who remembered her creating the innovations that built Cauldron Engineering. After Marissa died, Thorn continued his pattern with their youngest son, Taryn. Aldrich's eyes found me in the crowd. "Stand up, son." Shaking, I stood. Every eye in the hall turned toward me. "For 17 years, Aldrich said, his voice thick with emotion, "Taryn Cauldron has been erased. His father took his designs, gave them to his brother, and told this boy he had to earn his place in a family built on his mother's stolen legacy." The screens filled with my blueprints, showing the progression from my childhood attempts to my recent innovations. Side by side with my mother's work, the similarities were undeniable. The same elegant solutions, the same creative thinking. But Taryn had something his father never understood. He had his mother's kindness, her belief that fixing things means healing them. Aldrich gestured to the crowd. "I've been watching this young man for months. I've seen him repair equipment for farmers who couldn't pay. I've seen him sleep in barns and work until his hands bled. I've seen him continue creating, even after his family destroyed him. My father finally found his voice. This is a lie. That boy is nothing. Those designs are mine. Aldrich's smile turned cold. Then explain this. The screen showed a dated video, timestamp from 6 months ago. It was security footage from my father's workshop. My father, tearing up my blueprints and handing them to Marek. My father, painting over my name on the workshop sign. The evidence was irrefutable. The hall erupted in chaos. Journalists rushed forward. My father tried to stand, to leave, but the crowd blocked him. Marek sat frozen, his face white as paper. Aldrich held up his hand for silence. Terran Cauldron will be launching his own company, fully funded by Devon's Industrial Solutions. Every design stolen from him and his mother will be returned. Every patent will be corrected. And Cauldron Engineering will face legal action for fraud and theft of intellectual property. The crowd turned to look at me. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. This was justice, but it felt like being crushed under its weight. Aldrich stepped down from the stage and walked over to where I stood. Your mother was my dearest friend, he said quietly, so only I could hear. When she died, I lost track of you. Took me years to find you again. But I promised her I'd look after you. Tears streamed down my face. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to learn what she knew. That real worth isn't given. It's built. And you've built something extraordinary. He placed his hand on my shoulder. Now show them what you're really capable of. 6 months later, I stood in front of the old workshop. It had been seized in the legal proceedings, part of the settlement. My father's reputation was destroyed. Marek had fled the capital, trying to start over somewhere new with a different name. The courts had ruled in my favor on every count. But standing here didn't feel like victory. It felt like the end of something sad and the beginning of something uncertain. I'd renamed the workshop Cauldron and Devon's Innovation Center. Not a family business, but a school. Young people with talent but no opportunities could come here to learn, to create, to build. For free. The same way my mother had wanted to help people. The same way Aldrich had helped me. On opening day, the building was full. Students at workbenches learning to weld and wire and design. Their faces bright with possibility. I'd hung my mother's original sketches on the walls, framed in gold. The torn papers I'd rescued from my father's office, carefully mended and preserved. Aldrich stood beside me, smiling. She'd be proud, he said. Not of this building, of who you became despite everything. I nodded, unable to speak. Through the window, I saw a figure watching from across the street. My father, old and frail now, just watching. I didn't hate him anymore. I just felt sorry for a man who'd never understood that stealing someone's work could never give him their gift. That evening, I stood alone in the workshop after everyone had left. The machines hummed softly, waiting for tomorrow's students. On the wall hung my mother's picture, restored and enlarged. She smiled out at me, forever young, forever kind. I pulled out the gear from her music box, the one piece I'd carried through everything. It was worn smooth from years in my pocket, a talisman against my father's cruelty. Carefully, I placed it in a small glass case and mounted it on the wall beneath her picture. This is what started it all, the plaque read. One small part saved from destruction. Proof that even broken things can be preserved. That kindness matters. That legacy isn't about what you inherit. It's about what you build. I heard footsteps behind me. My father stood in the doorway, hesitant. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, his voice cracking. I just wanted to see what you built. I looked at him, at this man who'd tried so hard to destroy me, and felt nothing but exhaustion. You taught me something important, I said finally. You taught me that earning your place means nothing if you have to crush others to keep it. He nodded slowly, tears on his weathered cheeks. Then he left. I locked the workshop door and walked home through the mountain town that had watched me fall and rise. The sign above the workshop glowed in the darkness. Cauldron and Devon's Innovation Center, where dreams are built, not stolen. My name, my mother's legacy, my place earned not through my father's approval, but through my own hands. Some people inherit their place. Others build it from ashes. But the ones who build never forget the fire that made them. And they make damn sure that fire lights the way for others.